Welcome back from the break. Next up, I'd like to welcome Cherre's Chief Product Officer, Kevin Mattice, and our Chief Technology Officer, Stefan Thorpe, for insights into Cherre's 2024 product roadmap and beyond.
Thank you, Karen.
Mics?
Think so?
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. We're really excited to talk about the product roadmap today. You just heard, right, a lot about things changing, right? You heard a lot about market dynamics. You heard a lot about changing operating models. And our goal today is to walk you through how we're going to come and serve, right, all of you to help support those changes within the product roadmap. So let's get into it. As Cherre said, I'm Kevin Mattice, the Chief Product Officer. I've been at Cherre now for about 6 years. I've been in the real estate data technology space for nearly a decade. My previous life was at Boeing on the software side. So I've spent most of my career taking messes of data and aggregating them together and getting them into products. And I'm really excited because Stefan's here to join me today. Usually he doesn't do this, so we're excited to have him on.
That is very true. I'm normally behind the screen. Stefan Thorpe, CTO. I've also been with Cherre for just over 6 years. And prior to that, I have 2 decades of building large-scale systems for multinationals around the globe. So less of a real estate, but way more focused around scale. Now, Cherre's product has always had a focus on long-term resiliency and flexibility. Sorry, sharing the notes for the next slide. I didn't realize that was going to happen. So we've got a focus for long-term resilience and flexibility. And we've been doing this for a really long time. And as we continue to grow, we're learning far more about this. So let's start with the discussion around data. And what would that discussion be without some ones and zeros? So let's start with all of our clients have their own unique data warehouse. That's hundreds of data warehouses. And powering those data warehouses are thousands of data pipelines. Now, I wish those data pipelines and those upstream systems didn't change, but they do. And they do it a lot. In fact, since I've been with Cherre, that's over 10,000 schema changes. And then, of course, the data has to keep flowing. And we've seen over 100,000 terabytes of data come through our system since we started. Now, my favorite fact of all is that today, now, we add more pipelines in 1 week than we did in 6 months less than 5 years ago. And I think that's a fantastic feat. And we're still learning, and we're still growing.
So as Stefan mentioned, we've come a long way, right? But our whole goal in 2024 is to take the power and the flexibility of Cherre's product and put it in your hands. So before we get into the actual product roadmap and the details, I want to zoom out and think about where we're going and the problem we're trying to solve, right? And the list of data vendors, the list of applications, right? This data ecosystem is large and complex. This isn't even a fraction of all of the logos that I could have put up here. But we can think about the Cherre platform and our product in 4 pretty simple areas. We have data coming into the platform. We have data going through the platform. We have data and insights coming out. And layered on top, we have trust and transparency across everything.
So the way that we view trust and transparency is through the lens of great data governance. And what we're looking at here is the 10 pillars of data governance. And as Kevin and I reveal our 2024 roadmap, we're going to come back to this data governance circle and see how they apply at each of the stages. So starting at the very top and overseeing everything, as you can well imagine, is data security. We understand the value of your data. We understand the need for it. So it has to be in every part of each one of these pillars. So here on out, it is integrated in every pillar that we continue to move through. So the first thing we have to do is start moving the data and get it into the system and into those data warehouses that we discussed. And we do this in a very simple and organized way. But as we said earlier, there's a lot of moving parts. Whilst it may be very simple on the outset, it can also be very complex. And this is already integrated into all of our flows and all of our structures.
So we've spent the last 5 years at Cherre building a lot of repeatable processes to get data into the platform, right? So much of what we do is all about scale and repeatability so that we can move faster in getting data in. But up until now, this has always existed behind the scenes at Cherre, right? For many of you who've worked with us, it's always, hey, don't worry, we pull data in, we have these repeatable connectors, it's available, and you're like, great, I guess we just have to trust the boxes and arrows, Cherre, that you told me are there, right? Now, the proof is in the pudding when we deliver, but we're now gonna focus on bringing that to you. So in 2024, what we wanna do is make the interface available so that you can start connecting to these systems on your own, right? So what you're looking at right now is when you're building a new connector, right? I'm gonna connect to one of these sources, I'm gonna enter my credentials, I'm gonna validate that I have access to this data, and then I'm gonna talk about when that data is available, right, at a given point in time from that source for us to pull it. Then you're gonna go ahead and set the frequency at which you want data to be pulled out of that system, and we're gonna put this all in your hands. Now, our other job is to continue to build out our pre-built library of this, right? And we need to stay ahead of the curve. So as many of you know, right, there's more and more data vendors showing up all the time. And the different application providers are doing a lot of work to say, I know my clients want data out of my applications. How do I get that data out faster and easier, right? A lot of you are aware of Argus's DDI product, right? The entire raw database behind the scenes. Yardi just came out with their new Replicate product, right? How do we get data out of these systems faster? And our job is to have the pre-built library available so that you don't have to worry about how you get data out of a system. That's our job, right? We can get it out repeatably in a scalable fashion and minimize the disruption downstream that you're gonna have on the system. Now, we just talked a lot about automated pipelines. Great, Kevin, we know Cherre does that. We've done that for a long time. But, right, the whole world of data is going to shift, right? We just heard a lot of conversation about changing operating models, right? And different third parties handling data and needing to get that all into one place. More and more as you think about that, right, a lot of data is gonna come through semi-structured Excel files, unstructured data, and it's gonna come from ERP exports, it's gonna come out of building systems, it's gonna come out of that manual process flow that you have that generates that Excel file, right? And that's the complete picture of data in. So one of the things that we're launching here in a few months is the ability to handle all of that semi-structured data coming into our data submissions portal. So a lot of you are familiar with this lovely trial balance example, right? Data that comes out of a lot of systems is not meant to be just uploaded into a database, right? So our job is to be able to parse this, automatically map it, and as we think about how we can start to implement AI across the process, right, this is a place where we're gonna be able to do that to allow you to, not spend the time, the effort, and the money to pre-clean all of your data before it can get in. So we're gonna go ahead and show you a little preview of what this looks like in the UI, because as you think about data coming in your pipelines, right, one of the things that's always been behind the scenes in Cherre is your ability to answer some basic questions, which is, what are all of my pipelines that are running within Cherre right now? Have they passed? When did data get delivered? When's the next time this pipeline's gonna run and get data delivered? Did something fail, right? Do I need to call up Margaret and say, what's going on? Something failed, right? And we want your new hires to be able to come in and start digging around, right? Hey, we have a ton of pipelines in Cherre, but I'm brand new here. Where do I find data for actuals, right? Where do I find data that's pushing into Snowflake? How do I know where that is? So giving you that ability to come in and search for all of that information in one place. Now, we also want you to be able to go and drill in, right? And Cherre's connectors are made up of a few different core pieces. One is the source of data, where we're pulling information from. One is the modeling of data. How are we transforming it and fitting it into a data model? And the next one is a destination. Where are we pushing it to? Now, as we're showing you this, we want to be able to give you some information, right? When was this created? When did it last get updated? Is it running right now? Has something failed? When is data going to get delivered next? And then allow you to go ahead and drill into what's happening between each one of these steps. So have validations passed when I pulled data out of that system and put it into the warehouse and started modeling it? Have my business validation rules gone and passed before I pushed it into my destination? Do I want to be able to add destinations? Maybe I don't just want it in my data warehouse. Maybe I want data in Anaplan or in another system that I'm leveraging downstream. So our goal is to give you visibility into everything that's running through Cherre.
So as you can see, we're moving up the stack. And as we do, we get to data architecture and modeling. Now, the foundation is the data architecture. We need to keep the good data flowing through into the right applications, into the right hands. But we need to control the flow of that incorrect data, that misentered information, or those changing schemas we need to check before they actually come into the correct location. And that is where our data architecture comes into play. Then there's the data modeling. Now, my first pitch from LD just over 6.5 years ago included enriching and connecting data. And that principle has been in every model we've ever tried to build. And it is those principles that enable those downstream use cases. The quick development of dashboards, the mining of insights, the powering of AI. And with a solid technical architecture in place, Kevin's going to introduce how we layer in industry knowledge.
So like I just said, we've spent a lot of time over the last 5 years figuring out how do we get data out of these systems and into the platform on a repeatable basis. The next step is how do we get it, right? It has to land in a repeatable model, right? That has to work in its way coming into Cherre, right? So there's a whole suite of data models that sit behind all of our connectors that pull data in on a repeatable basis. We then have a whole suite of data models that we have to feed into in order to power different downstream use cases. Right? You might want to push that data into a data warehouse. You might want to push it into a BI tool. You might want to push it into an application for modeling financial data. And there's an entire ecosystem of hundreds and hundreds of data models that sit behind the scenes. Now, for a long time, that was invisible to you unless we sent you one of these images over an email. But what we're focused on in 2024 is bringing this all up into the interface, because as you think about your consolidation of systems, as you think about your operating model changes, as you think about the applications you're going to use, more and more different departments across your organization are going to want access to that data. And they need one central place to understand what's part of that data model, how does that data connect, right? How did Cherre structure it? What kind of transformations to the data happen, right? That all has to happen here. Now, these standard models also pave the way for all of the feature engineering and machine learning modeling we're doing to develop the analytics products that a lot of you leverage today with our data kits, right? So these are really the foundation of where our technical expertise comes together with our domain knowledge to build a repeatable product that you can leverage.
We've heard a lot about the evolving operating models. And inevitably, we're going to consolidate to save costs. And as we do that consolidation, the demands on each individual piece of data is going to drive up. The number of users that are looking at it, the number of people that are looking at it, all need to gather the same information. And that's why our 2024 roadmap is centralizing that overarching metadata, that information, to ensure that your teams are using the same data dictionaries and models and understanding the overall context. This is going to drive better business decisions as a whole that are far more consistent.
So we're talking a lot about data moving in, right? And data getting into the platform, giving you the ability to monitor your different pipelines. Are they running? Have they failed? Has data been delivered? But we also want you to be able to monitor the actual underlying data. Right? It's really important that you can interact with the data that exists within those pipelines. So one of the things we just launched last month, and we started with our data submissions portal product, was the ability to comment back and forth. so that the people submitting data to the platform and the people reviewing data going through the submissions portal can interact and find out, right, has something gone wrong with this data? How do I need to fix it? Where might this problem have come from? Right, and work together to be able to resolve whatever is going on. Right, and more importantly, we need to make sure that we can line up this data with your downstream workflows and processes, right? So there's a timing perspective to all of this, right? So it's really about being able to monitor the data, right, not just at the pipeline level, but go one step deeper. Now, next month, we're also launching the ability to set reminders, right? Because a lot of times people are going to be responsible for uploading data. So we'll be able to say, hey, this person's responsible for submitting this data. We're going to go ahead and remind them that they need to come and upload it to the platform. Now, this is all well and good, right? Very exciting. Thank you, Cherre. We know you've done a lot of this behind the scenes, and you brought it to us, but value from data pipelines doesn't really come until you can mine insights on top of that data. And as Stefan and I, right, you can imagine every other day, about 3 times a day, we are asked, Kevin, Stefan, where are you going to put AI into your product, right? This is a recurring theme for us, and this is one of the places where we think about injecting it first, right? It is great. Now, we're going to be able to look at data across submissions, across providers, across periods, over time, across your entire portfolio, and start to mine insights on top of that, right? Is this team constantly late in submitting data? We're seeing some drift in data over here, right? And this is where we can start to do anomaly detection. We can start to do drift detection. We can start doing more intelligent things on top of your data because we've put it all in one place to mine. So what we just launched, right, last month was really the first stage of this, which is our submission monitoring insights process, right? And being able to look at the DSP across, but it's not just going to be in the data submissions portal, right? Later this year, we're going to take this concept and put it on top of all of your data pipelines so that you can mine more information about just the data coming through, right? And get more value out of it from there.
So we all know the adage, bad data in, bad data out. And we will inevitably come to data quality as we come around this full circle. Now, we're going to have to do this together. All of those validation rules, all of the pre-built rules in our library, together we're going to rubber stamp our data so that we truly trust that we can make the right business decisions on this. So what we're looking at here is the overview of your data ecosystem. It's predominantly going to be used by your technical users, such as myself. And I understand the need to quickly assess the state of my ecosystem. So in the top right, we've got the KPIs, a quick overview of where everything's at and how it's running. And as we shift context a little bit, I can see the latest changes in the data, or maybe the changes that didn't happen because of one of those upstream failures that we've discussed. And as I broaden context more, I need to line it up, my data changes, with the process changes that maybe have just occurred. And maybe I need to change the schedule to support our quarterlies or something along those. So we can see those. And then I can even bring in more data if I want to from one of our other sources and one of our pre-built libraries.
So I don't know if any of you could tell, but Stefan's really excited about that. He loves, right, the idea of being able to track his data as it moves through the process, right? It's really important. But it doesn't cover the full picture, right? And the other thing that we're going to be really, really heavily focused on is another thing that we've been doing behind the scenes for a long time, but we want to bring to you, and that's the ability to run a whole suite of data validation rules on top of your pipelines and on top of your submissions. So what you're looking at here, right, is the aggregation of our library of out-of-the-box validation rules running on top of your connectors that will give not only your technical users, but your business users the ability to find out, are there things that are going wrong in my data, and how can I resolve those issues upstream? Now, it's really hard to get people to care about the quality of data that they're plugging into those operational systems upstream, right? That's a really difficult people problem to solve. However, people start to care, right? When you're producing an asset report and you're missing leases on your asset, or you're reporting on occupancy that is clearly wrong, right, you start to care about the data going into those systems and the data as it goes through. Right? Think about it as the democratization of data quality. Right? It is pulling this together in one place where all of your users can understand, hey, we're checking this data, something went wrong, here's where it might be going wrong, how do we go upstream and fix it so that we can actually trust the data coming into those downstream platforms. So as we think about what this is going to look like, right, for a given connector, we're going to start off with just high-level observability. Right? So looking at a table level, right, how much data is passing through Cherre every single time that pipeline runs, right? Over and over again, over time. Are we seeing anomalies in that, right? Are a lot of records being added or removed that we didn't expect, right? Some really basic profiling. Then we'll allow you to go one step deeper, right? And for any given table, go in and actually dig through all the individual columns that are in that table, right? Are there fields that you expect to never be empty? Are there unique values, right? Hey, I expect this to be unique every time, but it's weird, for some reason that's not the case. And then as you think about drilling into validations, right, it's not just about what passed. We expect things to pass, but I want to be able to drill into what went wrong, right? What failed in my data validations? And then if there's not a rule that you see that you know you want, let's give you the ability to create your own rules, right? So here we're going to check some dates, right, across a data set coming through. And we're going to punch in a custom SQL query, say I want to check that this date is always greater than this other date, and set a threshold, right? Because unless it passes that threshold, I don't want to get an alert on it, right? And then plug in a description so that everyone else who's looking at that rule understands what it does and can decide whether or not they want to be alerted when something fails, right? So really bringing that all together and putting it in your hands.
Yeah, and coming full circle on our data governance. We brought data in, we've stored it, it's secure, it's isolated. We processed the data, we've modeled it for those downstream use cases. We've monitored the data, we validate it, together we put that rubber stamp on it. Now we need to squeeze the last bit of value out of that data. And this is where integration and interoperability become key. Our ability to upload it or push it to other systems is all built into this.
So as we get into where our focus is, as Stefan mentioned, interoperability and integration are key to rounding out, right, a data governance strategy. And our job in 2024 is to continue to build out the library of pre-built integrations we have to all sorts of different systems that you leverage today, right? That might be data warehousing tools, that might be BI tools, that might be the operational applications that you use today. But our whole goal is to bring data to the systems that you and your users leverage every day to minimize, right, the amount of thinking you have to do about getting data in and the more time you can spend on making decisions, right? We just heard Brett talk about, right, one of the important things of data, and it is how do you get it, right, into systems where people can make decisions on top of it, right? And as we go, we will continue to build out the library of systems that we can push data into to meet your users where they are. So with that, I want to come back to where we started, right, and where our overall goal is. And it is taking, right, the flexibility and the power of our platform that we focused on building for the last 5 years and give you the power to leverage it yourselves, right? And the whole goal there is to be able to do exactly what LD said, right? Learn to dance in the rain, right? And as we're able to do that, we want you to grow with us as we build out the industry's largest ecosystem of data vendors and systems, right? And put that power in your hands. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming. Stefan and I are here. We want you to come talk to us about the roadmap, right? We're really excited about this. This is just a sneak peek. I know he doesn't want to talk to too many people today. Yeah. Come find him, talk to him about it. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Tama to wrap up our morning sessions before we let you all go to lunch. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.